Alright, welcome back to week 2. I want to talk a little bit about your writing assignment this week, the does it fit argument. So if you pull up the PDF that's attached there, you'll see the overview. The assignment is due by midnight, August 31st. That's this Sunday coming up. What I want you to do is in a clear, well-organized, and academic essay. Using MLA documentation, support your ideas with research from credible sources which you properly cite. And hopefully by now you've viewed or you will be viewing the credible sources video. And stop for just a second to talk about academic essay. This is an academic essay. All the essays we write in here will be academic, which is a little bit different than some of the things that you might write in the discussion forum or you may have written before. So I want you to keep that in mind as you're writing. It's different to say that the location I grew up in was appropriate because I had an affinity for, say, shooting or something, as opposed to saying I'm glad I grew up in the country because I really like to shoot stuff. That's not as academic as saying that you really like shooting rifles, what have you. So just kind of keep that in mind. It shouldn't sound conversational, and you may see if it does that I've made a note on your essay that this is too conversational. So in the context of whichever you've chosen, whether it's decade or location in which you fit, you are going to organize your essay in the following way. So first, with an introduction, you can start this as kind of broad as you want to, ideas about fitting in, or just start with the wider periods or time periods, broader locations, and then narrow your way down to the very specific topic that you're going to be talking about. In that, be sure that your clear thesis statement says what decade or location you belong in and has a nod to the opposition. So I've given you some examples. While my friends like to think that I should have grown up in the 60s, my love for all things grunge and my quest for new technologies makes me a true child of the 90s. You see, is my nod to the opposition. My friends think I should have grown up in the 60s. They oppose my idea that I should have been a true child of the 90s, which I was. I may have been born in a rural part of Pennsylvania, but my love of diversity and options make me better suited to life in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I grew up in a small coal mining town in Pennsylvania. You see there's my nod to the opposition. I acknowledge that yes, that's where I was born. However, I believe that I'm more suited to Charlotte, North Carolina. So the next paragraph that you're going to write about is basically acknowledging your opposition. This is a Rogerian argument, and it basically means that you're going to acknowledge that there is another side and that they do have credible points. However, that doesn't detract from the argument you're making. So it's not about telling them that they're wrong and you're right. It's really about acknowledging that those things exist and there is merit to it. However, like I say here, while they make a good point, I still feel much more connected to any of these other places. So you might talk about what other people have said, or you might pull research from Pennsylvania and talk about how this part of rural Pennsylvania has rolling hills and good hiking trails, and I do like to hike and I like to be outside. However, it doesn't really fit the rest of my lifestyle choices and where I'd like to be as far as having access to things. So you're going to then support your thesis. I'd really like to emphasize this part right here. Build paragraphs. That's plural, meaning more than one. Last semester, I had several students who took this as a direct 1 paragraph, 2 paragraph, 3 paragraph, 4, and they did not fare well. You're building multiple paragraphs. This is the bulk of your body because you're building all your support right here. So make sure that you are doing that, and also make sure that you use research. Every now and again, I have a student who decides they're just going to tell me how it is because that's how it is. Without any research. Well, I grew up here, I know all about the town. That's fantastic. Back it up with research that supports those things that you know about the town that you fit so well in. Okay? After you have built a successful argument and you've explained how all of these things fit you and how this research supports the argument that you're making, that you belong in whichever area or decade you say you belong in, then you need to conclude your argument. Ultimately, don't just repeat everything that you said. You may have been taught to write conclusions like that in the past. I would prefer that you didn't. I'd actually like you to really think about what can be concluded based on the information given. Based on everything that you've said, bring it all together and kind of synthesize that. Okay? If you considered all of the facts presented, what does it ultimately say? Some basic requirements: it should be standard margins. It's 12-point font. I'm not so worried if it's Times New Roman or Arial or Courier. Just use a standard font. 1 to 3 pages in length. That does not include your works cited page, which is on its own page, always starts on a separate page. You'll use 2 to 4 sources. They should be credible sources. You'll use MLA documentation, you'll have a works cited page, and you'll use in-text citations. And while content and style are important, I'm going to be focusing heavily on your MLA formatting and documentation. Again, I say it because somebody will not do it, but every body paragraph should have some research to support it. So every single paragraph in the body should have research. None of them should just be opinionated. Okay? How will I grade you on this? I'm going to be using a rubric which is attached to the assignment. And if you look over on this rubric screen, you'll see basically there are 4 levels. There's this 0 level, which I guess makes a 5th, but this is really just unacceptable. So required elements, basically you've met all those elements that we talked about on the last on the assignment sheet, and you have done a really good job overall. Everything's excellent. You're going to exceed expectations, and you'll be up here in the level 4 range. If you're missing some kind of minor things, you didn't quite do this, didn't quite do that, you could expect to fall in a 2, but if there's essential required elements that are missing, it's here. But basically, if you just don't meet the basic guidelines, I mean, this paper is maybe a paragraph, that's not an essay, and that's not going to meet the basic guidelines. There's absolutely no research used in it whatsoever. It does not meet the basic guidelines. Okay? Clarity and coherence. If I read this and you've done a good job of explaining it and connecting your ideas, you're at this end of the spectrum. If I just can't understand what it is that you're trying to say, and these things aren't logical and it's not related to the topic, and you've gone off on this weird tangent, then you're on this end. And you can read through the varying degrees in the middle. Organization and citation. Here I'm looking to see that you've actually done your MLA citation properly, that you've quoted things when they need to be quoted, that you've used parenthetical documentation when you need to use parenthetical documentation, all of these things that you need to do with MLA. And if you don't have any of that, then you're going to be down here in unacceptable. I'm also looking to see that you use transitions, that your paragraphs flow from one to another and seem to make logical sense in the order in which you've put them. Spelling, grammar, and mechanics. I'm not looking specifically for errors. I don't go out and do a tally mark or a check mark on how many times I find a comma splice or a fragment or a run-on sentence. However, I am looking to see that the grammar and the mechanics and the spelling do not detract from your overall ideas. So if what you've written, you've got a few minor errors, there's nothing huge, you're probably somewhere in this range. If it begins to become a distraction, we're falling lower and lower on the rubric, and ultimately if I spend more time focused on the errors that you're making than the actual content of what you have written, you're going to fall into this 0% range, which is just unacceptable because your errors, you didn't edit, you didn't proofread, you didn't do anything to make this essay ready to actually submit as a final kind of draft. Depth of understanding. I want to see how well you take the knowledge that you've gained from your research and you have synthesized that with your own knowledge and your own argument. So for everything that we write in here, your argument is going to be central. You're only using support and research. You're using research as support, I should say. So if you seem a little bit confused about the things that you've used or you've talked about, you can see kind of the variations as we go down. Okay? If you have any questions on the rubric or the assignment sheet itself, feel free to email me. The last thing that I want to show you is when you click on the title for Does It Fit Argument, it's going to pull up a submission box for you. And on the submission box, you'll see it gives you the due date, tells you how many points are possible, and right here you can click Write a Submission and you'll get a little Dropbox thing down, but what you really need to do is browse my computer, because you're going to have a Word document or a PDF file that you attach. If you attach a Pages document, there is a high probability that I won't be able to open it. So if you are a Mac user, make sure you save it as a PDF and submit it that way. When you're done, you can tell me anything I need to know. Not really useful, add comments, but if you need to let me know something about it, by all means add the comments. And then click Submit, and that's going to submit your paper. The other thing that you need to do, and if I can back out of here and go back into the week, you're also going to submit your paper to SafeAssign. SafeAssign is going to check for plagiarism. So again, when you click on the safe assignment, and it won't let me as an instructor click on it, but when you click on it, it's going to give you that option. You just load your document in there and it'll run it through. I allow you to view, so when you run it through and it does its report, you'll be able to review the reports as well. So especially if this is high and I've given you a note and the grade for it, that you need to watch certain things, you want to go through the report and make sure that you have those things worked out and that you're not making those mistakes in the future. Again, any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to email me. Good luck, and I'm looking forward to reading your papers this week.